They laughed when I said I'd make it. Not the kind of laugh you share with friends. This was different. This was the sharp, cutting laugh of people who had already given up on their own dreams and wanted me to join them in that graveyard of what-ifs. They didn't just doubt me, they pitied me. Be realistic, they said, as if reality was some fixed prison we all had to accept. They talked about odds, about statistics, about the thousands who had tried and failed before me. They reminded me that people like me, people from nowhere with nothing, don't end up on podiums. They told me to get a normal job, to stop chasing fantasies, and to start living in what they called the real world. But here's what they didn't understand. Their real world felt like a slow death to me. I didn't want safety. I didn't want comfortable. I wanted to feel alive, even if that meant I had to bleed for it. So while they were busy being realistic, I made a decision that changed everything. I decided that their laughter would become my fuel. Every single person who said you can't just added another mile to my training. Every doubt became a rep. Every insult became motivation. The laughter followed me everywhere. It stuck to my skin like sweat after a brutal run. It echoed in my head when I was trying to sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I could see their faces, smug, satisfied, certain that I would fail. But what they never saw was what happened after the lights went off, what happened in the 4 a.m. darkness when the entire world was asleep. No one saw me sitting on the edge of my bed, heart pounding, staring at a pair of running shoes that were literally falling apart. These weren't some fancy Nike trainers. These were held together by duct tape and prayers. I would sit there in the cold, asking myself the same question over and over. What if they're right? What if I'm just delusional? Because let's be honest, I wasn't some prodigy. I didn't have expensive coaches or scientific meal plans. I didn't have a trust fund or a sponsor. I had a dream, and I quickly learned that dreams are heavy. They sit on your chest when you're trying to breathe. They whisper to you when every muscle is screaming for rest. Here's the truth. Nobody tells you about chasing something big. It makes you feel crazy. While everyone else was living normal lives, going to parties, posting vacation photos, buying new phones, I was counting calories and saving every single rupee. My friends would invite me out and I'd have to say no because I couldn't afford both the night out and the protein I needed for recovery. They stopped inviting me after a while. They said I was missing out on life. But I had a secret they didn't know. I wasn't missing life, I was building one. While they were collecting memories, I was collecting skills. While they were spending money on temporary happiness, I was investing in permanent change. See, everyone wants the highlight reel. Everyone wants the podium finish, the viral moment, the trophy ceremony. But nobody wants the 10,000 hours of invisible work that comes before it. Every single morning before the sun even thought about rising, I was awake. Not because I was motivated. Listen carefully to this. Motivation is a liar. Motivation shows up when you're feeling good and disappears the second things get hard. I wasn't running on motivation. I was running on obsession. I was possessed by a vision of who I could become, and that vision didn't care about my feelings. It didn't care that I was tired. It didn't care that my legs hurt. It demanded everything, every single day. I worked a soul-crushing job for 10 hours a day. I smiled at customers who didn't even see me as human, just so I could afford the food I needed to keep training. Then, when everyone else was heading home to relax, I headed to the track. I headed to the rain. I headed to the pain. There were days when it was so cold that my hands went numb. Days when it was so hot I thought I might pass out. But I showed up, always. The failures were the worst part. There were training sessions where my body just gave out, where I collapsed on the wet pavement, tasting blood in the back of my throat, wondering why I was putting myself through this torture. I watched other athletes, people with natural talent, with money, with connections, breeze past me in competitions I couldn't even afford to enter. And it hurt. It hurt so much that one night I almost quit. I was sitting in my dark kitchen at 2 a.m., hands shaking from exhaustion, staring at a glass of water. My body was broken, my bank account was empty, my social life was non-existent, and I thought about how easy it would be to just stop, to choose a normal life, a life without the 4 a.m. alarms, without the constant hunger, without the crushing fear of being just another person who tried and failed. I picked up my phone to call my coach and tell him I was done. But then something hit me, a memory. I remembered the kid I used to be, the 10-year-old boy who would run just because it felt like flying, who didn't care about medals or fame or proving people wrong, who ran because the wind in his face made him feel alive. And I asked myself, what would that kid think of the man sitting in this kitchen about to quit because things got hard? That question broke me. It shattered every excuse I had been building. I realized that dreams don't work because you wish for them, they work because you sacrifice for them. And I'm not talking about the pretty kind of sacrifice that looks good in motivational videos. I'm talking about the ugly sacrifice, the kind where you choose discipline when your feelings are begging you to quit, where you do the workout when you're already exhausted, where you show up when no one's watching, no one's cheering, and no one cares. So I kept going, month after month, year after year. There was no applause, no spotlight, no camera crew documenting my struggle for social media, just me, the sound of my breathing, and the rhythm of my feet hitting the ground. And slowly, something strange started to happen. The people who laughed at me, they stopped laughing, not because I had won anything yet, but because my consistency started to terrify them. People don't know how to process someone who refuses to quit. It makes them uncomfortable because it reminds them of their own abandoned dreams. They would ask, "Why are you still doing this?" And I stopped explaining, because if you have to explain your why to someone, they'll never understand it anyway. Your why is sacred. It's between you and the future version of yourself. Here's what nobody tells you about consistency. It's boring. It's repetitive. It's the same stretch routine, the same meal prep, the same ice baths, the same mental visualization exercises day after day after day. But those tiny, invisible improvements, they stack. Like compound interest, they start to add up. The doors that were once locked began to crack open, not because I begged for opportunities, but because I had become the kind of person that opportunities couldn't ignore. I had built a foundation of iron in the darkness, so when the light finally hit me, I didn't crumble. I was ready. The day of the championship finally came. It wasn't a movie moment. The weather was terrible, cold and raining. I was nervous, my stomach was in knots. But as I stood on that starting line, I looked at the athletes next to me. They looked fast, they looked confident. They had better gear, better coaches, better everything. But I knew something they didn't. I knew that none of them had died and been reborn as many times as I had in training. I knew that I had already faced the worst version of myself alone at 4 a.m. with no one watching, and I had won that battle 1,000 times. This race, this was just a formality. When that gun went off, I didn't run with just my legs. I ran with every lonely hour on the track. I ran with the weight of every person who said I couldn't. I ran with the memory of my younger self who believed in me when no one else did. I ran with 3 years of pain, sacrifice, and invisible work compressed into every single step. And when I crossed that finish line first, when I heard the crowd roar, when I finally saw what I had done, everything changed. Suddenly, the same people who called me unrealistic were calling me talented. The ones who told me to get a normal job were saying they always knew I had it in him. They called me lucky, they called me gifted. They acted like it just happened overnight. They didn't see the 5,000 hours of work. They didn't see me throwing up after sprint sessions. They didn't see the nights I cried myself to sleep because I was too exhausted to even eat. They only saw the result. They only saw the highlight. But here's the thing, I didn't care about their praise any more than I cared about their laughter, because somewhere along the journey, I realized something profound. The dream isn't the medal, the dream isn't the trophy or the fame or the validation. The dream is the person you have to become to earn it. The dream is the transformation. I became someone I didn't even recognize, stronger, mentally tougher, more disciplined, more focused than I ever thought possible. Your dream is watching you right now. It's watching how you handle the days when nothing seems to be happening. It's watching whether you choose the comfort of the bed or the grit of the road. It's watching whether you quit when the world ignores you, when your friends doubt you, when your own mind tells you to stop. Success doesn't require you to be the smartest or the most talented person in the room. It requires you to be the one who refuses to show up. I won because I stayed in the race when quitting made perfect sense. I won because I understood that the temporary pain of discipline is nothing compared to the permanent pain of regret. Think about that. Imagine being 60 years old, sitting in a comfortable chair and wondering, what if? That terrified me more than any failure ever could.
So let me tell you something. If you're watching this and you have a dream that people are laughing at, good. Let them laugh. Their laughter means nothing. If you're scared because you don't have resources or connections or talent, good. That fear will keep you humble and hungry. If you're feeling alone in your journey, you're not. I was there. Thousands of others are there right now, grinding in silence, building something the world can't see yet. Work for it when nobody believes, especially then, because dreams aren't for the lucky, they're for the ones willing to bleed for them in silence, work for them consistently, and protect them fiercely against a world that wants everyone to be average. So keep your head down, keep moving, ignore the noise, and one day you'll stand in the life you built with your own two hands, and you won't even remember the sound of their laughter. You'll only remember the sound of your own heartbeat reminding you that you earned every single inch of your victory. You didn't just